the girl sold by her family, who returned with a secret empire. The sun rose slowly over the village of Capsawar. Dust shimmered on the dry paths between the huts. Morning began with the sound of cocks crowing and children running barefoot across the open fields. Women carried water in clay pots balanced on their heads. Men returned from tending the goats, calling greetings that drifted across the air. The smell of wet earth lingered after the small rains that had fallen the night before. Among the village families lived a girl named Akinyi. She was not yet 14, and yet her eyes held a quiet stillness that made people take notice. She was the daughter of Nyanjiza and Morenio, simple farmers with more mouths to feed than they could manage. Their small plot of maize barely yielded enough to survive the seasons. The village whispered about the hardships they endured. One afternoon, when the sun hung heavy in the sky, a man named Otieno came to their home. He was a wealthy merchant from Eldoret, known for his large herds and careful dealings. He spoke in measured tones. He looked at Akinyi with an unreadable expression. Her parents listened, nodding at the promises of wealth. Nyanjiza rubbed his chin and Morenio clutched her beads. Akinyi did not understand the words spoken. She only sensed the change in the air. The man's hands were clean and firm. He spoke of gold cattle and a future the family could scarcely imagine. Her parents agreed to the arrangement without asking Akinyi what she wanted. The villagers shook their heads quietly. Some looked away. Others whispered their disapproval into the dusty winds. The wedding was simple. Akinyi wore a cloth dyed in shades of red and yellow. Her hair was braided tightly against her scalp. She did not smile. She did not cry. The elders spoke blessings over her, words that floated in the air and settled around the huts. After the ceremony, she left with Otieno, climbing onto the back of a donkey that would carry her to a home she did not know. In her new home, life was different from anything she had known. The walls were made of stone. The floors swept clean each day. Meals were plentiful, yet silent. Otieno was polite but distant. He rarely spoke to her beyond necessities. Akinyi learned to move quietly, to wash, to cook, and to endure. The first nights she lay on a mat and stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind and thinking of the village she had left behind. Seasons passed. The village became smaller in her mind. Faces blurred. She learned to speak softly and not ask questions. She learned that to survive, she had to keep her own thoughts hidden. Sometimes she would sneak into the small garden behind the house and touch the leaves of the guava tree. They reminded her of home. Otieno's business called him to distant towns. During those absences, Akinyi found moments of freedom. She would read the papers he kept in the study, tracing the numbers and learning the ways of trade. The servants did not notice that she was learning. The accounts, the receipts, the way goods moved from one town to another. She observed quietly day after day. A seed of understanding grew inside her that she did not share with anyone. When she turned 17, she realized she could manage the market herself. She began to barter secretly. She found ways to buy low and sell high in the local towns. Her skill impressed a few merchants who never suspected her age or her status. They only saw the cleverness and precision in the girl who asked the right questions and made the right deals. Back in Capsawar, her family continued to live as they had. Nyanjiza and Morenio bought cattle with the money Otieno had given them. They smiled when Akinyi's name was mentioned. They did not realize that the girl they had sold was already shaping a future beyond their comprehension. Akinyi, however, remembered everything. The whispers, the secret judging eyes of the neighbors, and the sting of her parents' greed. Each evening, she sat in her small room, looking out at the hills that reminded her of her village, and she planned. She would return one day, not as the timid girl who left, but as someone who could command respect, who could reveal the truths that had been buried in silence. The years that followed were slow and deliberate. Akinyi built her knowledge and her skill. She traveled to nearby towns under the guise of errands for Otieno. She met traders, bankers, and businesswomen who had learned the ways of commerce through years of toil. She absorbed their lessons, noting their mistakes, their strengths, and their secrets. She never revealed her true self, hiding behind the polite, obedient persona that Otieno expected. Let us move forward in the day. The sun warmed the clay rooftops and children began their games in the village square. The smell of roasted maize and fresh tea drifted through the air. The same village that had watched her leave continued to spin its daily routines, unaware that one day, the girl they had sold would return. At night, Akinyi often remembered the river that ran near her home. She recalled the cool water and the stones that slipped under her bare feet. She remembered listening to her mother sing while pounding millet into flour. She remembered the warmth of her father's hand on her shoulder. These memories were soft and painful. They reminded her of the life she had left behind and of the life she was now forging silently. Each lesson learned in the towns, each coin traded and multiplied, was a step toward her return. Akinyi carried no bitterness in her eyes. She carried clarity. She understood the value of patience, of knowledge, of waiting for the right moment to unfold. She knew the villagers believed she had been broken. They did not know that she had been growing, silently, into a power they could never imagine. The days turned into years. Akinyi grew taller, stronger, and wiser. Her hands, once soft and small, were now steady and skilled. The market became her classroom and her playground. She learned to read the intentions of merchants, to detect lies hidden beneath polite words. Each lesson brought her closer to a day she had imagined quietly while staring at the ceiling in Otieno's home. As the evening settled, the village fell into the hush of twilight. Smoke curled from cooking fires. Chickens returned to the coops. Mothers called their children to wash their faces and prepare for the night. Somewhere, Akinyi looked at the stars from her window, thinking of Kapsawar. She did not yet return. The moment was not ready, but the seed of her plan, sown years ago, now had roots deep and unyielding. The rains came slowly that year, soft and persistent. They tapped against the tin roofs of Kapsawar, ran down the walls of clay huts, and filled the river until it shone under the afternoon sun. The children splashed in puddles, laughing and squealing as their mothers watched from the doorways. The village seemed unchanged from the time Akinyi had left, yet beneath its familiar rhythms, the story of the girl who had been taken was carried quietly in the memory of those who remembered. Akinyi's days in the towns beyond Kapsawar were filled with routine and diligence. She had learned to navigate the labyrinth of trade. She knew the value of each goat, each sack of grain, each handful of beans. She kept meticulous notes in her mind, memorizing prices, traders' habits, and routes that merchants seldom spoke of. Each journey brought new knowledge. Each decision she made quietly accumulated wealth. She never flaunted it. She did not need to. The power she was building was invisible to those around her. Otieno continued his business as usual, unaware of the depth of Akinyi's understanding. He trusted her more with each passing year, believing her loyalty to be unquestioning. She helped him calculate debts, plan deliveries, and negotiate with other merchants. Her words were soft, her hands steady. He never guessed that the quiet girl he had married was learning to outmaneuver even him. At the same time, Akinyi never forgot her family. She recalled the day her father had agreed to the arrangement with Otieno. She remembered the way her mother had avoided her eyes, as if guilt were too heavy to bear. She remembered the villagers who nodded politely and whispered their judgments. Those memories were a fire that burned steadily in her heart, neither consuming nor fading. They shaped her resolve and reminded her of the life she would reclaim, not with anger, but with clarity. She began to invest in small trades under her own name. She started with a sack of maize, sold it in a neighboring town, and used the profit to purchase another. She learned which towns required which goods and when. She discovered the traders who lied about quantities and the ones who underestimated her. Slowly, the wealth she accumulated became substantial. She hired a few young women as assistants, careful to choose those she could trust. They too learned the art of discretion and precision. News of her growing influence reached distant towns. Merchants whispered of a woman who conducted deals with intelligence and grace beyond her years. No one suspected that the girl was once the shy, quiet Akinyi of Kapsawar. They only saw the power in her manner, the certainty in her voice, and the subtle way she guided transactions. She learned to command respect without raising her tone. She learned to shape agreements without forcing them. Yet, despite her growing success, she returned in thought to her village. She remembered the small hut where she had slept as a child, the river where she had played, and the guava tree she had tended with gentle hands. She recalled the laughter of her siblings, now grown and walking their own paths. She did not hate them. She only knew that the story had been interrupted by greed. That knowledge made her patient. When she finally decided it was time to return, she did so quietly. She did not ride with fanfare or announce her arrival. She entered Capsor in the late afternoon, when the sun cast long shadows across the dusty paths. Her clothes were simple yet elegant. She carried herself with a calm authority that drew attention without demanding it. The villagers paused in their routines to watch the woman walk past, a stranger who seemed familiar yet different. Akinyi went first to the market square. The traders there did not recognize her at first. She purchased small items, spoke with confidence, and asked questions that revealed knowledge far beyond her years. Whispers followed her as she moved. Some villagers began to recognize her features, the set of her jaw, the quiet strength in her eyes. By the time she reached the river where she had played as a child, a small crowd had gathered. Her parents lived on the same plot, tending the cattle they had bought with Otieno's money. Nyanjiza lifted his head as she approached. His eyes widened. Morenio dropped the basket she carried. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant call of a rooster and the soft murmur of the river. Akinyi spoke gently, telling them she had returned. She did not accuse. She did not demand. She only said that the years had taught her many things. Over the next days, she met with family and villagers, listening more than speaking. She heard the stories of how her absence had shaped the household, the village, and even the small disputes that had arisen among neighbors. She learned of marriages arranged hastily, of children sent to towns far away for work, and of debts that had gone unpaid. The village revealed itself to her in ways she had once known and in ways she had never imagined. Then she began to reveal the first part of her secret. She invested in the local businesses, quietly at first, offering guidance to farmers, traders, and artisans. She brought methods she had learned in distant towns. Grain was stored more efficiently. Prices were calculated fairly. Young women were trained to manage small trades. Slowly, the village felt a shift. The whisper of a new presence traveled across the huts. Akinyi did not need to boast. Her results were evident. At night, she would sit by the river, listening to the water and reflecting on the changes she had begun to sow. The village, once distant and silent, now hummed with a different energy. She did not seek revenge. She sought restoration. Her heart carried both the memory of betrayal and the understanding of opportunity. She understood the balance of patience and action. As the months passed, Akinyu's presence became woven into the fabric of the village. Merchants sought her advice. Families came to her with disputes. Children followed her, curious about the stories she told of distant towns and the lessons she had learned. The girl who had been sold had become a woman whose knowledge and vision were beyond anyone's expectation. She still did not confront her parents directly. She allowed them to witness the transformation quietly. Nyanjiza and Morenio began to sense that their daughter was no longer the girl they had sold. They watched as she guided the village's small economy, as she taught, advised, and corrected with a calm authority. They realized that the girl they had let go had grown into a power they could neither control nor ignore. The villagers began to talk in hushed tones of the woman who had returned. They spoke of her with respect. They marveled at the way she navigated problems without raising her voice. Akinyi had become both familiar and untouchable, like the river that ran through the heart of the village. Everyone felt her presence, and yet no one could claim her. Let us move forward in the day. The sun rose again over Capsor. The dust shimmered along the paths, and the children ran barefoot across the open fields. Akinyi walked among them, not as the girl who had left, but as someone who had returned with clarity and purpose. Her journey was no longer hidden. It was part of the life of the village, shaping it quietly, steadily, and irrevocably. The winds of late afternoon swept across Capsor, carrying the scent of dry earth and the soft fragrance of flowering acacias. Akinyi moved among the villagers, her steps deliberate, yet gentle. She visited the small shops and the stalls that sold fresh produce. She watched the way the women measured grains and the way the men weighed livestock. She did not interfere at first. She only observed, as she had always done when learning. It was in these quiet moments that Akinyi began to teach. She showed the farmers how to store grain so it would not spoil in the sun. She guided the traders in counting money with precision. She taught the young women how to manage small earnings, how to negotiate for goods fairly, and how to plan for the future of their families. No one spoke of her past. No one asked questions about the years she had spent away. They only noticed the results of her guidance. The first time she approached her parents with a plan, it was carefully measured. She suggested ways to expand their small herd and improve their crops. Nyanjiza listened silently, his eyes shifting with a mixture of surprise and unease. Mourinho nodded politely, though her hands trembled slightly as she touched the clay pot she carried. Akinyi spoke softly, her words precise, her voice calm. She did not scold. She did not accuse. She only showed a path that could benefit them all. The village began to change under her influence. Markets became livelier. Trade improved. Young women no longer waited passively for marriages to determine their futures. They learned to sell small goods, manage money, and plan for times when work might be scarce. Children who had once been restless and aimless began to watch her carefully, learning in silence. Akinyi did not speak of power. She spoke of knowledge, of fairness, of careful planning. Yet, not all in the village welcomed her quietly growing influence. Some of the elders who had once whispered their judgments about her departure now frowned openly at her presence. They whispered about pride and ambition. They murmured about a girl who had returned as if she owned the land she had never tilled. Akinyi noticed these glances and hushed whispers. She understood their fear, yet she never confronted it with anger. She only continued her work with patience, letting her actions speak where words might fail. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Akinyi visited the small schoolhouse where the village children gathered. She spoke to them quietly about learning, about listening, and about noticing the details that others might overlook. She encouraged them to ask questions about their world and to keep their minds open. Parents watched from the doorway, quietly astonished at the wisdom that came from one so young. When she first left, meanwhile, her parents grew uneasy. Nyanjiza had long imagined that the girl he sold had been powerless, yet each day he saw the proof of her knowledge and influence. Mourinho felt the weight of guilt like a quiet shadow she could not shake. They had expected Akinyi to return as someone broken, subdued by the years and by her marriage. They did not expect the woman who walked among them with calm authority, with knowledge of markets, and with insight into people's needs. Akinyi decided it was time to reveal a part of her secret. She gathered the village traders and the elders in the market square. She spoke of trade routes, of deals made in nearby towns, of the way money could be multiplied if handled wisely. Her words were gentle but firm. The villagers listened, rapt and silent, sensing the depth of her understanding. She demonstrated methods she had learned far beyond the village, showing that knowledge was her true inheritance, not the cattle her parents had hoped to buy. With her absence, even Otieno's distant reputation reached Kapsor. Traders spoke quietly of a woman who managed deals with precision and skill, who had created wealth quietly and without fanfare. No one mentioned her past. They only marveled at the intelligence and authority she displayed. The villagers began to understand that Akinyi had returned not merely to reclaim her place, but to transform the village through patience, knowledge, and careful guidance. Her influence spread beyond trade. She mediated disputes between families, offering solutions that were fair and enduring. She listened to both sides and found ways to guide them toward compromise. Villagers who had once argued loudly in the village square now sat quietly with her, following her gentle suggestions and advice. Conflict diminished, not because fear forced silence, but because respect encouraged cooperation. At night, Akinyi would sit outside her small house by the river, listening to the water. She recalled the life she had left behind, the girl who had been sold by her own family. She did not feel hatred or revenge. She felt clarity. She understood that the past could not be changed, but the present could be guided. The river became a place of reflection where she traced the path she had taken and the path that now lay ahead. Akinyi's presence in the village became a quiet legend. Young women began to speak of her in hushed admiration, noting how she moved, how she spoke, and how she listened. Merchants recognized her skill and sought her advice. Even the elders who had once doubted her began to acknowledge the wisdom she brought. Her return was not celebrated with songs or drums. It was noticed in the changes, in the order, in the calm energy that now spread across Kapsor. And yet, Akinyi carried her final secret quietly. She had accumulated wealth far beyond the village's imagination. She had built networks in distant towns. She could have demanded respect, influence, or power overtly, yet she chose to guide, to teach, and to reveal gradually. Each action was measured, deliberate, and purposeful. Her empire was not one of display but of quiet authority, of knowledge, and of careful stewardship. Let us move forward in the day. The sun rose and the children ran across the fields. Women carried baskets to the market. Men returned from tending cattle, and in the midst of it all, Akinyi walked with calm authority. She did not need to announce her power. It was visible in the respect she earned, the knowledge she shared, and the change that quietly settled over the village she had once left. The morning light stretched across Kapsawar with a softness that made the village feel almost suspended in time. Dew rested on the grass. Smoke lifted gently from early cooking fires. The roosters called out their steady rhythm. Akinyi stepped into this quiet dawn with the calm presence of someone who had walked both suffering and triumph yet carried neither with pride nor bitterness. Her footsteps were steady. Her gaze was clear. She was a woman who understood the full weight of her journey. The village had grown used to her presence, yet a deeper shift was taking place. Families who once struggled now found guidance in her methods. Farmers noticed that their crops lasted longer in storage. Traders discovered that their profits increased when they followed the patterns she taught. Young women gained confidence as they managed small businesses that once would have been dismissed as child's work. The changes came slowly and quietly, like the way water shapes stone without force. Still, Akinyi sensed that something remained unresolved. Her parents watched her from a distance, always silently, always with a weight that had grown heavier with time. Nyanjiza often stood near the cattle, pretending to be occupied. Mouranio lingered near the cooking area, her eyes darting toward Akinyi whenever she passed. Their guilt braided itself into their daily routines like a shadow that refused to detach. Akinyi knew the moment to address this would come, but she also knew such moments could not be forced. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, a soft gathering of villagers formed around the market. The air carried the faint scent of roasted maize mixed with fresh herbs laid out for sale. It was then that Akinyi chose to reveal more of her secret. She called the traders, the elders, and the young women she had mentored. Her voice remained calm as she explained that the networks she had built during her years away reached far beyond the towns nearby. She described opportunities that could raise the entire village, not just individuals. She spoke of partnerships with distant merchants who trusted her judgment. She spoke of stored wealth that could secure Kapsawar through seasons of drought or times of poor harvest. She explained that she was ready to establish a cooperative owned by the villagers themselves, one that would give each family a stake in something greater than their small farms or market stalls. The murmurs rose slowly through the crowd, some faces lit with hope, others hardened with caution, yet all listened with full attention. Her parents remained at the edge of the gathering. Mouranio held her shawl tightly, as if clutching something fragile. Nyanjiza's jaw was clenched, though his eyes revealed a storm of emotion he had never spoken aloud. The girl they had sold now stood before the entire village offering a future none of them had dared imagine. Akinyi's voice never shook. She spoke as someone who had already walked the path she described. She offered the cooperative not as a gift, but as a shared foundation. It was not charity, it was empowerment. In the days that followed, villagers came to her with questions, concerns, and hopes. Some feared change, others feared disappointment. Akinyi listened patiently. She reassured them with explanations drawn from experience. She showed them records she had kept from her years of trade. She shared simple methods for tracking their earnings. She did not rush them. She understood that trust was not built with grand speeches. It grew slowly through transparency and humility. Then came the evening when her parents approached her at last. The sun had long set and lanterns glowed softly along the paths. Crickets chirped in the tall grass. Akinyi sat outside her small house by the river, listening to the water that had always brought her peace. Nyanjiza and Mouranio walked toward her with hesitant steps. When they reached her, they stood silently for a long moment. The river continued its steady murmur. The night breeze brushed past their faces. Nyanjiza finally spoke. His voice carried the weight of seasons that had shaped him harshly. He told her of the hunger they had faced during the years before she left, the debts they could not repay, the pressure of mouths to feed. He admitted the decision they made had never been forgotten, that it haunted them through every harvest and every night. Moreno's tears fell quietly. She apologized for the silence she had kept on the day Akinyi was sent away, explaining that shame had sealed her throat and fear had blinded her judgment. Akinyi listened without interruption. She did not turn away. Their words were not a surprise. They were echoes of truths she had long carried within her. When they finished, she spoke gently. She told them she understood the desperation that leads people to choices they later regret. She acknowledged the pain their decision had caused her, but also the strength it had ignited in her. She explained that her journey, though shaped by hardship, had also shaped her into the woman she had become. There was no dramatic reconciliation, only a quiet settling of the air, the kind that comes when unspoken truths finally find their way to the surface. Her parents remained kneeling by her side long after the words had been spoken, absorbing the calm in her voice, the acceptance she offered, and the strength she now carried with ease. In the weeks that followed, the cooperative became a reality. Villagers contributed small amounts to join. Akinyi ensured that every decision was explained clearly and every transaction documented. She traveled to nearby towns with groups of young traders, teaching them how to negotiate prices and identify opportunities. Women who had once relied solely on their husbands' earnings now managed small ventures that grew steadily. Men who had doubted her wisdom began to seek her advice openly. The village transformed itself slowly. The market expanded. Storage facilities were built to protect goods from spoilage. Children were sent to school with supplies bought through cooperative funds. Families who had once been divided by disputes found common ground in shared goals. The influence of Akinyi's quiet empire spread beyond Kapsawar. Traders from neighboring villages came seeking guidance. People traveled long distances to learn from her methods. Yet Akinyi never changed her rhythm. She still woke at dawn to walk near the river. She still greeted the villagers with the same steady calm. She still taught with humility and planned with patience. Her empire did not show itself in grand buildings or loud declarations. It revealed itself in opportunities, in stability, in the subtle rise of hope that settled across the village. As the evening settled, Akinyi walked through Kapsawar watching the children who played where she had once played, the women who now traded with confidence, the men who discussed future plans with newfound clarity. The village breathed differently now. It felt balanced, strengthened by a future it had not dared imagine before. Akinyi felt the peace of someone who had returned not to prove a point but to rebuild what had been fractured. Her story would one day be told in whispers around cooking fires, not as a tale of revenge, but as a tale of quiet resilience and deliberate strength. The girl who had been sold had returned not with anger, but with knowledge and purpose. She had built an empire not from wealth alone, but from wisdom shaped by hardship and guided by patience. And as the night deepened, the river continued its steady song. The stars reflected on its surface. Akinyi stood at its edge, knowing her journey had come full circle. She had returned not to reclaim what was lost, but to create what had never been given. Her story had become part of the land itself, a quiet legacy, a steady presence, a reminder that strength can grow from the softest beginnings, and that even the deepest wounds can lead to paths of light.